Before we begin, candidate Ant Lewis has asked me to say a few words on his behalf, which all the other candidates are more than happy for me to do. As you may be aware, Ant has aphasia, a speech and language disorder caused by a serious stroke 10 years ago. Ant is taking a full part in the senatorial campaign, but his difficulties with language mean that the traditional Hustings format of questions without notice is not practical for him, so he will not be answering questions tonight. Aphasia is a condition that affects communication but not ability. He will be responding to questions online on his Facebook page, and he will also be holding a number of surgeries which are better formats for his particular disability. Ant has asked me to thank you for your understanding. Now we are going to hear from each of the candidates who has 3 minutes to speak to you. There will be a warning bell, but because they have done this more than a dozen times, I'm sure they won't need the warning bell. And we start with Frank Luce.
Good evening, St Helier. You're looking big and beautiful tonight, and I hope you're wanting change in government. My name is Frank Luce. Thank you for attending this Hustings tonight, and thank you for ensuring that your name be on the electoral roll, enabling you to vote. Your vote and how you vote has never been so important. We are facing a landmark election. You are going to shape the future of the next government for all islanders. You, the minority, are going to carry the apathetic majority into better government by your choice of candidates before you tonight. Never before has the gap between the government and the electorate been greater. Islanders are so appalled by the antics of the present sitting states members, they have turned their back on politics and have lost total faith and feel angry that their opinions are completely ignored by the elected members once they get into government. Frankly, reading letters to the editor in the Jersey Evening Post should be made compulsory reading for all states members. The appalling successive low voting turnouts as the war is testimony to the contempt Islanders have for standing government. The situation can only be reversed by better government made up of members who first and foremost listen to the people and shape their policies to make government inclusive to the electorate. Then and only then will the general public feel included, in touch, and this will result in a greater desire to vote. In the meantime, and for this most important election, your vote will speak for all islanders. Potential voters see the system of government in Jersey as bad. They want nothing to do with it. That was an opinion held by me. However, the present assembly have horrified me to such an extent that I am now before you asking for your vote so that I may represent the thoughts, feelings and opinions of Islanders in the Chamber itself. I want to have a strong and significant input in two long outstanding issues: the disgraceful hospital saga and the independent inquiry into the lifeboat power and personality struggle that present government shamefully does not wish to happen. To face in the new Assembly the looming priorities of Brexit and population control and ensure that agriculture and tourism are better supported to form a holy trinity of business sectors along with the finance industry. I want to work for a listening state chamber that puts Islanders first. For that I need your confidence, support and vote. Make change happen. It's in your hands. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak to you, and hope to meet you and be of service to you for the next momentous 4 years. For your ballot paper, the name is Luce, Frank Luce. Thank you for listening. Good evening.
Gordon Troy.
Good evening, St Helier. I'm Gordon Troy. Gordon George Troy is actually on my ballot paper. My family, I'm related to the Troys and the Shentons. We've represented the island in politics for over 60 years, fielding some 8 deputies and senators so far. I hope to be the 9th. And next week we have a new government. A new government will need to attend to the following. And this has come out of seeing all the various hustings. We're going to need to build a new hospital, which we do need urgently. We're going to need to solve the housing crisis, which we've got to work on. We need to control population via work permits, give all local businesses the staff they require, face threats from the Brexit challenges, develop new industries like financial technology, and develop financial technology education. And we must take care of the whole community, especially the politically overlooked pensioner. This will take money, but Jersey's not poor. We can achieve these goals, but for some years there has been bad housekeeping and mismanagement of the economy through capital project overspending. Capital projects must be 1, necessary, 2, value for money, 3, on time and on budget. If we keep to these rules and stop government financial waste and take the action of working hard to get these tasks completed, we will have a better Jersey and a better community. And my pensioner friends out there, as you can see, I'm powered by pensioners. My pensioner friends, you've been overlooked, poorly treated by the Gorse government. We need a livable pension. After paying tax and social security for years, you receive little in return. I want to make the livable pension a reality by appointing a commission to look at how we can improve all aspects of the pensioners' lives. From increased pension payments to healthcare, from diet and exercise to well-being and community life. I want to be the pensioner's friend and the pensioner's senator. The pensioner needs a strong voice in government. I will be that voice. We may not be as fast or physically strong as we were, but we are strong-minded and determined. There are 20,000 of us. We're actually an army. Your vote can power me to victory to represent you as senator. We need to gather our friends and march to the polls on Wednesday to make our voice heard. Pensioners, a vote for me is a vote for you in government. Today, I'm powered by pensioners. Next week, I want to be empowered by pensioners. Please vote Gordon George Troy for senator so that I may be your voice in government. Thank you.
Ian Gorst.
Monsieur le Connétable, I'm not sure whether that's how I should address you after the Reverend's opening comments. Ladies and gentlemen, I stood for elected office to make a difference and to provide hope for the future. But this election is very much about change. Over the next 4 years, we face challenges that will set our future course as a community for many, many years to come. The uncertainty and the opportunity of Brexit, the uncertainty of the EU, and international global uncertainty. Of course, we have also suffered the effects of the global financial crisis. And as Chief Minister and a father, I understand the effect that the Great Recession has had on family budgets. Jersey is a great place. We have made significant progress across the community. Our economic strength has not happened by accident. I want, and I have always wanted, to ensure that all islanders share in that economic strength, but I'm not satisfied. There is more that I want to see achieved. I have been listening to islanders, and that's why, in addition to my manifesto, I make the following 5 commitments if you re-elect me. Within 6 weeks, I will create a new affordable housing commission which will drive down cost and increase supply. Within 3 months, I will bring forward changes to the competition regulator, driving down the cost of living. Within 3 months, I propose an overhaul of child and adult mental health services, reducing waiting lists and increasing support. And within 6 months, I will bring forward changes to the long-term care scheme to better provide for those with disabilities. And I will continue to maintain our constitutional position by standing up for us in Westminster and around the world, by continuing to represent our economy and our way of life on the international stage. On Wednesday, you will cast your vote at a time of great international uncertainty and instability. You will have your say on how we should meet those challenges and how we should make those decisions. I believe that when we work together, And my goodness me, do we need to work together? We can achieve change and a better way. There is a way ahead for us as an island. I have experience and the plans to secure our future. I stand for hope for the future so that you don't risk yours. I would appreciate one of your votes on the 16th of May. Thank you very much indeed.
Sam Mezek.
Ladies and gentlemen, this Wednesday you have the opportunity to change the face of Jersey politics forever. Never before have voters had such a clear choice on the ballot paper, a choice between business as usual or change, and Jersey can't afford business as usual any longer. Under the current political leadership, we have seen Jersey become an island of haves and have-nots. Whilst Middle Jersey continues to be squeezed, we have seen the rise of poverty. A third of pensioners, a third of children, and half of single-parent families living in relative poverty, figures made worse by the cruel and vindictive decisions of the current government to cut £10 million of support provided to these people to fill the financial black hole caused by the incompetence of successive Jersey governments. From time to time, I've left the States Chamber feeling shame. Shame that the institution that I am so proud to have been elected to can make such disgraceful decisions, seemingly oblivious to the consequences these debates have on the lives of real people who already face more than their fair share of hardship. I felt this shame because this is not the Jersey that I know and love. The Jersey that I know is one where people are hardworking, generous, and compassionate. That is the true Jersey way. The Jersey that I know has the potential to be a beacon around the world for equality, for democracy, and for environmentalism, if only we had a government with a clear vision of how to get there. We in Reform Jersey stand united on a 33-page manifesto committed to make this an island that works for everyone. To those who may criticise Reform Jersey's manifesto, despite having no positive alternatives of their own to suggest, I say that it isn't financially irresponsible, it isn't politically unreasonable, and it certainly isn't radical to say that the states of Jersey should be working to improve the lives of all of the people who live here. This is the basic promise that every islander is entitled to expect their representatives to work towards. We have 18 candidates. Each bring to the table their own unique experiences, their successes and their trials and tribulations, a cohesive group of hard-working and like-minded individuals committed to equality, to democracy, and to social and economic justice for all. This is what we believe in, this is what inspires us, and this is what will guide our decision-making as we work constructively to make the states of Jersey work in the interests of the many and not the few. Things don't have to be the way they have been for so long. With a strong Reform Jersey team working together for a fairer island, things will never be the same again. This Wednesday, you have the opportunity to change the face of Jersey politics forever. Please don't waste it.
Stevie Ocean.
Turn it up, Bradley. Right, that's better. Right, bonsoir, Monsieur Conatar. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm St. Helier. It's nice to be here. 2 years ago, I stood before you in the by-election and told you that I had an objective, and that was to take the letters UK offered of 5 islands on Google Maps. Now, I've done that, and that was successful. That cost me 2 days of arguing with the Americans. What am I doing at the moment? Well, first of all, I'm actually in touch with YouTube, LinkedIn, and also Instagram and Twitter. Educated in the same way that we are not part of the United Kingdom. And I will keep that up, and I will maintain that this is done Also, I made history. Now, as you know, 2 years ago that there was a problem on the ballot paper. There was confusion. I lost a lot of votes and there was a lot of problems. I made my mind up that this time round this was not going to happen. And I got this done. I actually got a government department to sort this out for me on my behalf. They took this to the law officers. And I added my equity card as credence, which proved beyond any shadow of a doubt that I'm not Peter Mac. And you see now, basically, the situation is I was being put in the category like Peter Mac. But you see, the difference being that I have a £10 million personal liability insurance on my equity card. And it was granted immediately. The ballot paper you see, ladies and gentlemen, this year is down to me. It is cool, concise and very easy, and there won't be any mistakes made on it unless they're intentional protest votes. Right, so what else am I going to do? Well, first of all, you may know that I'm standing as Chief Minister. I want to get into the states and I want your votes, obviously, please, but I want to change the way the States Assembly runs. I'm going to turn things upside down if I do get into the states. Also, talking about the uniqueness of the website JE. Now, look, we've got a unique situation here of this island and the island identity. It's very, very important that everybody takes part, including the police, fire and rescue, ambulance, everybody. I want this place to be unique in every single way and to maintain this uniqueness throughout. Also, driver courtesy. Now, last Christmas, this was unbelievable. I was driving past the Pomodoro Hotel, minding my own business, when this woman walked right out in front of me like I wasn't there. I think she was full of the Christmas cheer. But unfortunately, what happened was that she spotted me at the last minute. I want to see people using designated crossing areas, or I'm going to enforce a jaywalking law, which is here in Jersey but never been used. I don't want to see anybody get hurt unnecessarily. And we're talking in terms of that's the end, and I've run out of time. Thank you very much.
Steve Pallett.
Good evening, fellow Constable and parishioners. My name is Steve Pallett and I'm the Constable of St Brellards. In this election I'm standing for Senator because I believe I have the energy, leadership and experience to play an active role in the island's next government. This evening I will be talking about the future of St Helier, the need for a new master plan and my intention to deliver a new skate park. Quite rightly, St Helier was one of the 4 main priorities of the last Council and Minister's strategic plan. Unfortunately, not enough resources have been put into planning what the future of St Helier might look like. Some areas of town have suffered from neglect. This failure to regenerate large areas of St Helier has led to residents in these areas being ignored and the inequality between the have and have-nots increasing further. Despite various master plans covering parts of St Helier, both the lack of a holistic strategy and the absence of joined-up collaborative thinking has resulted in a disjointed approach that's failed to link up all parts of St Helier, both old and new. Many residents of St Helier feel neglected and let down, which is why in my manifesto I refer to the need for a new master plan for St Helier. By committing to current developments such as proposed by Andium and Gas Place and other future developments, we need to carefully consider the balance between the density of housing and the need for appropriate levels of open space and amenities, combined with good walking and cycling routes. It is vital we get it right now if it's not to cost the taxpayer and the parish more in the long term. Any new master plan must take into account how areas of St Helier interlink with each other. The waterfront and Fort Region are obvious examples of how issues are preventing 2 resources from being used to their full potential. The approach taken to date isn't good enough, and we must make a promise to St Helier residents that we will do much better. Only by government improving its ability to listen to its people will strategic planning work to the benefit of all. I want to be a member of the next Council of Ministers, but only one that listens, communicates and is compassionate. As part of the next government, I want to champion the delivery of a new skate park for our skating community. In a short time, we've made a good start, but we need to get on and we need to finish the job. Not only will a new skate park exercise young people, it is the right thing to do. Sections of our community should not be hidden away. They should be supported and celebrated. I want our community to have an active future as part of a new Active Jersey strategy. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to address the challenges facing this island in your parish, then you're going to need to vote for committed, forward-thinking people who are prepared to work together to address these issues. I think I've shown through my professional and political life I'm willing to work with anybody. Please consider me for one of your very valuable votes this Wednesday. Thank you.
Simon Bree.
Good evening, Monsieur le Connétable, ladies and gentlemen. I am Simon Bree. I'm proud to be a Jerseyman and honoured to be one of the deputies for St Clement. I am chairman of the Economic Affairs Scrutiny Panel, the Future Hospital Review Panel and the Machinery of Government Review Panel, and vice chairman of the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel. I've been working hard on your behalf to hold this government to account. There are major issues facing our island which will have a direct impact on the daily lives of every one of us. Unless we tackle these now, our quality of life on our island will change forever. Brexit is looming, with its unknown impact on our economy. The finance industry is vital to our economy and continued prosperity, but we must diversify our economy and support farming, tourism, the digital sector, small business and startups, so as to reduce over-reliance on the finance industry. Population growth, if left unchecked and uncontrolled, will have serious consequences on our quality of life. Work permits, which are seasonal and time-limited, are the only solution. Families looking to buy their first home are finding it impossible. Government must support parishes in delivering small-scale, affordable home developments to give islanders hope for a better future, much sooner these than large-scale developments of concrete and steel. We must reduce the financial burden on middle to low-income families by reducing the cost and size of the public sector. This does not mean reducing services, and simply raising taxes and charges is not the answer. Removal of GST on food and children's clothing would be a step in the right direction. And government must stop wasting your money. £26 million on a new hospital and not a spade put in the ground. £800,000 on an aircraft registry and only one aircraft to show for it. Countless millions spent on UK consultants, with more spend just announced by the new chief executive. Politics in Jersey has become polarised. It is time to regain the middle ground. It is time to have a government that has a social responsibility and is not just some uncaring, soulless corporate entity run by grey-suited accountants whose only concern is balancing the books. It is time to have a government that is committed to protecting and upholding the traditions and customs that make Jersey unique and wonderful. It is time to have a government that listens to all the people, not just big business. It is time for new political leadership. It is time for your voice to be heard. Your vote is your voice, but change will only happen if you do vote. This election offers you a real opportunity for change. To the role of senator, I bring my work and life experience, my political experience, my strong work ethic, and my courage to stand up for what I believe in. Working together, we can make a real, positive difference to the lives of every member of our society. I would be honoured to receive your vote. Thank you.
Tracy Valwa.
Good evening, Connétable, ladies and gentlemen. I have served as a States member for 9.5 years as Deputy of St Saviour and Deputy of St John. I have carried out numerous roles during this time that have either influenced or had a direct impact on policies and legislation. I have served as an Assistant Minister in both Education and Treasury, as the Chairman of the Public Accounts Committee and President of the Scrutiny Chairman's Committee, and been party to approximately 50 reviews. So why Senator and why now? When the world is changing at such a rapid pace, it concerns me that we are unable to embrace change and be leaders in areas such as education and health. We fail to recognise what education really encompasses. No one identifies with the ideals of a curriculum or government policy. but they do remember the enthusiasm and inspiration of teachers. I would like to place faith and trust back into the teaching profession and not dictate to them what should or should not be the norm for our future generations. Invest in a comprehensive further education campus that supports not just students leaving education, but those who wish to reskill and change career or life opportunities. The ability to provide public services will continue to be under strain without addressing the role of immigration and population. I support work permits, and although I recognise the uncertainty that outside influences have on our economy, there are real concerns as to how we can afford or even support the demand the island is currently facing. A full and comprehensive review of the workings within the income support system are imperative and need to be considered against the role of personal taxation and the many anomalies which currently reside within the system and cause many issues with people trying to achieve real financial independence. Valuing care is a serious and important area for whoever is successful in this election. Illness does not work to a timetable, respite is few and far between, and much of the care provided is from charities. I feel we need to be seriously concerned about the demands that our health service face and will continue to face in the coming years. Not only because of an ageing demographic, but there are many people living with conditions that because we do not see them, there is a view that they do not exist. There is a need to support the vital services of both health and third sector services, but also to recognise the need to address the viability of the Health Insurance Fund and consider its objectives to meet a primary care model that assists in prevention, diagnosis and support. I am tenacious, hard-working and a team player, but I also recognise the importance of being accountable to the electorate in delivering on their expectations. The role of a States Member is not easy, but I am a person of integrity and willing to rise to the challenges we continue to face. Please consider me for one of your votes this Wednesday, the 16th of May. Thank you.
Christina Moore.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This campaign has made one thing very clear to me. You want a better future, a better approach to politics, and a better way of working. My campaign is about balancing the competing priorities of community, economy, and environment. We're making decisions so that Jersey can be the best place to live, work, and grow up. The politics of division are not my cup of tea, but there's one statistic that stands out about life here. 3/4 of people living in rural parishes feel satisfied with their local neighbourhood, yet in St Helier, that figure is only 35%. I see that statistic as a call for help from the people of this parish. As a deputy for St Peter, a parish with a mix of people living in both urban and rural settings, I understood the need to focus on St Helier, and I supported this in the last strategic plan. But no funding was made available, which has made it difficult to deliver on that commitment. That is not good enough. You deserve more. Tonight, I want to outline to you what my plan will do to help St Helier. To achieve this, to achieve good things, I believe we need to be able to pay for them. Today, we have an economy that performs well and is competitive. I want to see it strengthen into the future. Boosting productivity is essential to achieve this and to manage population growth. I want to do more, like funding a digital skills academy, embracing fintech opportunities and promoting the arts and creative industries. We need to take action on the cost of living too. This can be done by encouraging competition and a living wage. That's why I supported the rescindment of the 20% retail tax. If St Helier is a priority, I felt we should be focusing on policies that promote a vibrant town centre, not one that discourages the competition from entering the market. I also want to see the next Assembly tackle the money go-round that Andium is constrained by, which forces them to charge 90% of market rents to almost a third of their tenants. Protecting our environment means delivering more green spaces here in town. I applaud the Constable's efforts to create pocket parks, for example, but the rest of the island can help too. By encouraging more active travel and greater use of electric vehicles, we can ease congestion and improve air quality for St Helier. I also want to see plastic-free island status within 2 years. As a journalist, I learned a lot about people and their stories. It was a privilege to take a behind-the-scenes look at real life, but I wanted to do more than just telling others what I saw. That's why I stood for election in 2011, and now I'm seeking your vote for an island-wide mandate. As a senator, I want to do more for Jersey, and I hope that you'll support me at the ballot box on Wednesday. Thank you.
John Lafondre.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm John Lafondre. I've been privileged to represent St Lawrence as deputy for the past 12 and a half years. But tonight I'm seeking your support to receive an island mandate. Professionally, I'm a chartered accountant with proven political experience. This is useful when dealing with money, complicated laws, and large projects. As President of Scrutiny and Chairman of the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel, it's been hard holding ministers to account over the past 3.5 years. We've issued the first legal summons to get information, changed the law to put witnesses under oath, looked at things like the finance centre, the hospital, Brexit and population policy. I've been an honorary trustee of the Laveau Housing Trust for over 20 years, giving me direct experience of the difficulties in providing social housing. We're presently investing £12 million into redeveloping Troy Court, which represents the heart of why we were formed. I want to see the states focusing on affordable houses and flats that people can treat as a home, whether it is renting or buying, housing that people can live in. I support the review of the housing market. We all want to retain everything good about Jersey, but there are other pressures on us, including population. We need far better controls, with some flexibility for business, but firstly we must have good data on what is currently happening within our overall population. Using my trust experience, it was me that stood up to the council ministers on their 90% rent policy. I made the small but quite significant change that prevented everyone from being forced to put all social rental at 90% of market, because I could see it would cause problems. Even that was a battle, but I'm not afraid of battles. The hospital has been a battle and a public relations disaster. I would say it reached its really low point when it's proposed to build it on People's Park. So much for making St Helier a better place to live. As the past Treasury Chairman of the Working Party in the States paying rates, I've always supported your constable, and I'm delighted that finally the states will be treated like any other occupier of property. This is about fairness and gives cash back to St Helier. We need sustainable finances, we know that. There are lots of things we want to do, but the money has to work first. And my job, if I'm elected, is partially to keep the costs down so that tax rises are kept to the minimum possible. I'm pro-business, I am pro-fairness, and I'm pro-community. I try to act with integrity and not to breach the public trust. Government communication has been poor. We shouldn't have to read the small print to understand the reality of what the Council of Ministers is doing. And for that purpose, at this time, in my view, we need proven political and financial experience, and I hope you'll consider I have that. I'm not going to magic up empty promises just before an election. I pledge to look at the hard evidence, I pledge to the long term, and I will listen. And I hope you'll consider me for one of your 8 votes. Thank you.
Gino Rizzoli.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Gino Rizzoli. I've been a resident of St Helier for some 30 years. I'm married with 2 boys studying at the Universities of Bristol and Reading. I, for my part, have studied the sciences, religion, psychologies and culture to one aim, to understand human behaviour. Half of our representation is ineffective in government because power is centralised. It has resulted in lost basic principles, which in turn has delivered poor and flawed legislation. Government today has an insatiable appetite for money. I will put a stop to this. We need an accountable government. I can deliver this by preparing legislation for detailed financial accountability. This is important because the detail of the spending is not what our government is doing. It's not what our government is doing, not what they say that it's what they're doing and not what they're saying they're doing. Sorry. Governments do not create wealth. You do. The job of government is to provide services that the public deem important. The economy belongs to the working people and business. Government must set the rules, but in so doing must take care not to inhibit the latter. Freedom for large and small businesses is imperative. It should never be the responsibility of business to provide welfare, that is government responsibility. It must always be funded by collective taxation. Business already has a huge responsibility in providing jobs and services. Anything that impedes the latter will always be counterproductive. Secondly, we need our skilled and unskilled manual workers. No intersection of society is more important than another. How, on one hand, can we give help to those in need, paying everything from their rents to food, clothing, and the like, and not provide affordable homes for those that work hard, pay the taxes to fund that welfare? It makes no sense. To reflect these states' rentals should fall by at least 30%. To all those in government that have stood down, we must thank them. However, the speed of change has left many governments reeling, Jersey no exception. A vote for me will put our government at the leading edge of change. I want Jersey to be the envy of the international circuit for the very best of reason. What unites our differences is not right-left politics or party politics. It's fair policy. The tourism, we need to understand the difference between a hand up and a handout for the rich and needy. Thank you. Your vote would be appreciated. Thank you.
Lyndon Farnham.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. In November 2014, I was appointed Minister for Economic Development, Tourism, Sport and Culture, and since then I have worked on behalf of islanders to provide strong, sustainable growth across all sectors of the economy. Maintaining a strong economy is important, not only because it provides jobs and new career opportunities, but also creates the wealth required to help those in our community who find themselves in need of assistance. It also allows society to develop for the benefit of everyone. This evening I would like to talk about the provision of affordable homes. And whilst there has been progress since 2014, with the delivery of over 250 new homes by Andium and more on the way, and the acquisition of sites capable of delivering in excess of 900 homes, together with some much-needed parish schemes, and in addition, the private sector is delivering in excess of 300 homes a year. But this still isn't quite enough. So it simply must be a key priority, a key target, in fact, for the next States Assembly to increase the supply of homes, at least in line with demand, if we are to make real progress. The challenge for so many young people aspiring to home ownership is, of course, the cost, and especially raising a deposit. So in addition to addressing the supply, there must be greater efforts to help islanders onto the housing ladder by introducing more help to buy schemes. And these should include deposit loans, shared equity, and equity release opportunities. We must also exploit new construction methods with new materials aimed at driving down prices and improving environmental standards and, of course, reducing home running costs. There are currently about 1,000 families in the rental sectors looking to purchase affordable homes. If we can help to facilitate this and release housing stock in those sectors, then we can create a more consistent supply, which should stabilise pricing and improve standards across all categories of housing. Ladies and gentlemen, we do have many challenges ahead, but we have strong foundations, and we need to strengthen those foundations further if we are to secure our future and to secure our future prosperity. To do that, we will need to elect capable people, people with positive vision, experienced people, people with a good track record in life who are committed to attaining that goal and working together for the benefit of all islanders. Ladies and gentlemen, Election Day is next Wednesday. And I too would be honoured to receive one of your votes. Thank you.
Sarah Ferguson.
One of the most contentious issues during this election is the siting of the hospital. The straw poll conducted at Trinity underlined the fact that voters wanted the site reviewed on a like-for-like basis as a true comparison. A planning application is slow, so a comparison can be done before the planning inquiry finishes. What else is there? There is the question of the bullying and harassment which exists within health. The HR of the department needs to be overhauled, both for the culture and for the complaints procedures. We need a reappraisal of the role, remit and composition of the State's Employment Board. They have been involved with the case of the consultant dismissed a week before he started work in December 2012, and that case is still ongoing. Despite this, we have an excellent service from frontline staff, despite the way they are treated by management. Please look at my ideas on health on my Facebook page, Senator Sarah Ferguson. I share the concern of Save Our Shoreline on the sea lettuce. The proposal to improve soil through regenerative techniques and reducing chemicals will assist in reducing the sea lettuce, as well as improving crop yields and quality, field drainage, and even the number of staff required. And we must be very prudent in our spending. The forecast in the budget was for a surplus of £335,000 in 2019, just 3/4 of the cost of a 3-bedroomed house. Not much of a margin on an £800 million turnover. We need a better profile of the tax-paying public and the financial of the demographics of immigration. There are trends affecting the future, there are preferences expressed by islanders, but without accurate information, we cannot combine these and make achievable plans. You will hear many promises during this election. I merely ask you to ask, how much will it cost and where will that money come from? We need change desperately, but we must have prudence in spending. Please vote for Sarah Ferguson for change with common sense and for someone who wants to improve the delivery of health services as the Minister. Thank you.
Ms. Scott.
Good evening, everyone. I'm not an established politician who has tolerated the waste of huge sums of public money that could have better supported our community, including those in need. I'm a fresh face, an Oxford graduate, a former Jersey lawyer with a strong background in tax and finance, and a leadership trainer. I'm good at working in teams to find solutions to complex problems and to respond to opportunities effectively. Even Brexit could offer the island ways to prosper in the right hands. My skills are easily transferable. As a qualified Jersey lawyer, I have studied the island's political constitution and scrutinised its laws. By working voluntarily as chairman of the St Brellard's Bay Association, I have direct experience of the shortcomings in the island's planning regime for affordable housing, tourism and environmental protection. If elected, I would work to reverse the dangerous trend of this island's government towards high spend and high taxation. It risks losing young and independently wealthy islanders who we need to support our increasingly ageing community. I would seek a more efficient and constructive use of our limited resources to support islanders. That includes cutting red tape, fairer tax and social security, introducing more effective immigration rules, while improving education, training and use of locals to fill jobs, and better regimes for affordable housing and protection of our natural environment. Such measures are less likely to inflate the cost of living for those who struggle already. I would propose reforms to our political leadership to achieve this change, to make the States Assembly better value for money, and to improve ministerial oversight of government departments with more political accountability and transparency. These reforms would reduce the number of States members and require ministers to act in closer partnership with representatives of scrutiny and local experts. I'm standing as Senator because I wish to offer my skills, knowledge and experience for the benefit of all islanders. If elected, I will be good value. This is all I can deliver in the time allowed to speak. Please look at my online manifesto at votemos.je to find out how, if elected, I will deliver much, much more to you. Jersey needs to believe in itself again. Your vote offers you an opportunity to help the island embrace the future with fresh energy and safe hands. Please consider me for one of your votes as Senator on Wednesday to deliver the change we all need.
Gerard Baudin.
Monsieur le Connétable, President of St Helier, good evening. Thank you for coming. I'm Gerard Baudin. Now, we all know St Helier is the heart of Jersey, once vibrant, but sadly, in my view, being slowly destroyed by government. We hear much about rejuvenation, but the only tangible effect I can see is diminished access. You reduce access, you cut commerce. Shops can't get their deliveries, customers can't get to the shops. So rather than struggle to find a parking space, what do shoppers do? They stay at home and shop online. The result is shops and businesses are closing down or relocating. And that decline affects not only St Helier, but of course it affects Jersey's economy as a whole. I blame those who think that traffic-free zones they see in large cities will work in Jersey. They don't. Huge shopping malls and hypermarkets with integrated car parks don't fit in a small island. Instead of empty rejuvenation promises, we need a proper plan, like more multi-storey car parks and a hopper bus running through town. Cramming as many flats as possible into St Helier is not the answer. We have to decide, is St Helier going to be a shopping town or one huge housing estate, complete with no-go areas and rising levels of crime? At the moment, as far as I can see, neither the states nor the parish have that vision. Now, I could stand here and tell you all about change, how I'm going to encourage tourism, I'm going to refurbish Fort Regent, I'm going to reduce poverty, and many other things, but I'm not going to, and you won't find it in my manifesto. Because any candidate who promises those things is actually misleading you, because unless they become a minister, none of those pledges can be delivered under our ministerial system. Yes, of course I have a view on those subjects, but it would be dishonest of me to pretend I could deliver them, which is why, if elected, I will dedicate myself to changing the system. I have the experience, 40 years of running my own business, 13 years as a States member where I served on the Telecoms, Housing and Public Services Committees. I later served on the Shadow Scrutiny Panel, the Planning Applications Panel, the Privilege and Procedures Committee, the Public Accounts Committee, the Law Revision Board, and various working parties. I wasn't idle. I was also Vice Chair of the Environment Scrutiny Panel, and I served for 13 years on the Management Committee of the Skye Youth Club. If elected, I promise to drive not only reform of ministerial government, but also address immigration control. We used to have work permits and a qualification period. That seems to have been diluted. I will seek a ministerial post from which I can achieve those aims. Thank you for listening, and I hope you will consider me for one of your votes on Wednesday. Thank you.
Phil Maguire.
Good evening. I've been asked, how are you enjoying this campaign? Well, I can tell you I absolutely hated it. Every second. I didn't want to stand, it's just that I couldn't sit down and be quiet when I saw some of the outrages that were going on, when I saw the government and the civil service bully and abuse fellow Jersey people. I couldn't stand down. I had to stand up and say, this is wrong. And if that wasn't bad enough, since I've been out standing up, people have been saying, well, yeah, have you not thought about this problem and this problem and this problem? And the outrages have just grown and grown and grown to a point where I was absolutely heartbroken on Friday night when I looked down at a young carer and said, basically had to admit there wasn't much we could do for her. And in fact, there was nothing we could change about that because the way the system works. Now, I get it. Most people don't care about these things because they're not their problems. And there's plenty of problems to go around. I mean, you know, we're being taxed into the ground, and the taxes just keep on coming. I'm amazed at the sheer ingenuity they have about what new taxes to come up with. And of course, we have problems of our own, and we don't want to go looking for other problems because we've got enough trouble trying to deal with the ones we've got. But the reason why I stood and the reason why I'm here is because those problems are our problems. They may not be our problems yet, but as soon as you have a system whereby you think you can get away with abusing one member of a community, then you start thinking you can get away with abusing everyone. And it's only a matter of time before they come looking for us. So even if you're completely self-centered and don't care anything about anybody else, these problems should matter to you because they're coming for you. Now, the question I'd like to ask is this all we've become? Just a load of people scrabbling together, just trying to make ends meet? Or is there something more to the spirit of Jersey people? Something that we can dig into and find a reason to correct these problems and correct them before they come looking for all of us? That's something that I can't answer. That's only a question that you can answer. Thanks for listening.
Ant Lewis.
And Lewis, you have never seen a candidate like me before. I am different. I have a different campaign and a different voice, but different is what Jersey needs. My stroke has left me disabled, but it has given me courage, determination and new insight. I will represent those who, like me, don't have a voice. Not just the disabled but everyone who feels that today's politicians don't speak for them. My focus includes the environment, equality, and community. We need to improve the community of Jersey. We need to improve the environment. It will cost money, but it is an investment for my children and your children. There is no clear voice for the environment in the current states. That has to change. Equality. I bring a new perspective, one formed by both success and hardship. I believe mental health provision must be higher up the political agenda. More understanding and reduced stigma. Where we see inequality and stigma in Jersey, it should be fought. We are improving and have more cosmopolitan living. To create a more equal island. The dangers of having an island of haves and have-nots. I believe that the most marginalized and downtrodden members of our society have something to contribute. From the inmate at Lemoy to the homeless man in the parade. We all have insights and abilities to help make Jersey a better place to live. Everyone has skills and talents. Everyone. We need a system that allows those talents to flourish. The first step is to break down our own stigmas. That is a role of education and defining common goals. Our children and their schooling hold the key. It is then identifying those abilities and channeling them where they are most needed. We need more social enterprises to create businesses and programs that build on our social capital. Like my campaign headquarters, the Beresford Street Kitchen. Communities working together makes us all stronger, and it starts at school. We also need greater recognition of support. The voluntary sector. With more effort from the states, we can better coordinate the work that charities do. I will be the first person with aphasia to stand for the states. I appreciate that that makes me different. You may ask, how will I be able to represent you? With modern technology, I can. But for more information, please visit my website, www.andlewis.com. I hope that I will be able to represent all islanders, including those who don't always fit in with the norm. You have 8 votes for senator. Please use one of those on someone who will truly represent change. Thank you.
Thank you to all the candidates for showing marvellous control in getting it into the 3 minutes. They have 2 minutes only to answer questions, and we're going to give them 2 questions each to start with, beginning with Steve Pallett. I would ask St Helier electors to ask the questions, so if you could just confirm that you are a St Helier elector when I ask you to give your question. I'll now ask for 2 questions for the candidates, please. I take the gentleman over there with his hand up. I think it's gentleman. The microphone is on its way to you. Sorry, I was asking the person over there. Sorry. Jeff was looking quite surprised at that point.
Hello, my name's Peter Guarino. I'm a St Helier resident. I've been resident on the island for the last 21 years and have been in full employment during that entire time. Last year I found myself made redundant, totally out of the blue. Now I'm sort of closer to my 60th birthday than anything else, and the candidates make a lot about compassion, the island's lacking compassion. Now, as a man with a mortgage, last year when I found myself redundant, I was entitled to absolutely nothing, no help from the states or nothing. Now, fortunately, I've got a wife who was able to carry on earning in order to pay our mortgage. But if that hadn't been the case, I would have effectively been actually kicked out of my house because I wouldn't have been able to pay my mortgage. At the time, I've also managed to fund 2 children through university who are both in employment in the UK now. Now, I'm just one individual, but I've heard of people in a similar predicament as I found myself last year, and there is no safety net in the states, in the current state setup. What would the candidates propose that they would do to rectify such what I believe a total injustice to people who found themselves in the position that I found myself last year? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'll take the second question, please. People upstairs, you may think we're ignoring you, but I do intend to come to you for the second set of questions. We're going to send a microphone upstairs, so just be on the lookout. I'll go to the lady in the front here. The microphone is on its way to you.
Our education system is failing its teaching staff, with records showing high staff turnover and difficulty retaining experienced teachers who, due to the extreme pressures being placed upon them and the lack of support, are leaving education altogether. What are your intentions in relation to providing the necessary support system and improvements to teachers' working environments to ensure quality education for the island's children?
Thank you very much. So I'm just going to repeat the questions for those of you who didn't hear them. I've also been asked to repeat the questions for our sign language interpreters. The first question to candidates is, people are made redundant, particularly those of, shall we say, maturer years, and no support for them. What will the candidates do to help them? And secondly, what will the candidates do for the support of teaching staff and in a failing education system? And we start with Steve Pallett.
I've certainly got a lot of sympathy for people that are made redundant. Clearly, I might be made redundant next Wednesday. And I might be in a very similar position with a mortgage still to pay and no income. But on a serious note, it's a very difficult situation to be in. You're right, the states don't really offer a lot of support for those that are found in that position. Obviously, there's things that you should do. Clearly, I'd hope our banks are at least sympathetic to the situation that you're in and give you an opportunity, some respite in terms of payments. But again, that's not the states offering you help. I think going into redundancy situation or redundancy scheme within the states, I think we should be offering more to those that are made redundant. How we do that through the social security system, I'm not quite sure. I'm not an expert on social security by any means, but I think we should be offering those that are made redundant more support. Clearly, getting back into work is really important. I think we've got a fantastic system at social security and trying to retrain people and getting people back into work, but that's not going to help you short term. So I think the bank needs to help. I think the states do need to offer some support to those that are put in that position. And certainly with 2 children, there should be and must be opportunities within the social security system to support you during that short period of time. In terms of the education system, I'm aware, obviously, that we're going through a difficult time in terms of teachers and attracting teachers into the profession. In terms of the workload of teachers, from my own experience of seeing teachers at work, they are too overloaded with paperwork and they don't spend enough time on the shop floor teaching children, and we need to change that situation around. Clearly, in terms of the working environment, I think we've got a good system in Jersey, but I think at the moment, is that it?
Thank you, Simon Bree.
Being made redundant is a horrible thing. I know I was made redundant myself about 12 years ago. The problem we have is that if you own a house, you own an asset. And effectively, at the moment, the social security system says, sorry, you own an asset. You want to sell everything and then spend all your money that you sell, then we'll help you. That's wrong, because you've paid into a system. For the last 21 years, you've paid your social security contributions. You've been a contributor to this society we live in, and it is totally wrong that you are not allowed some form of help, even if it's for a limited period of time, to allow you to pay your mortgage payments, to allow you to find another job. Because, I'm sorry, I used to work in the finance industry. Banks don't really care. They see it purely as a profit and loss situation. Lending is risky for them, so they don't care. So we need to sort this out. With regard to teaching, investment in education was part of the strategic plan. I would say that the government have failed completely, because they have failed to see that what is important about education is the teachers, not the building. That is important because you can't obviously have not fit for purpose buildings, but they have failed to see that the real key to teaching our children is the staff who teach them, not the buildings they sit in. And I think the problem is they have failed to recognise the pressures that teachers are under daily, constantly, constant monitoring, and we have to stop that. We have to invest in the staff as well as the building, but we have to invest in the staff, and we have to get extra staff into schools to make sure that every child has the same level of teaching, irrespective of which school they attend. Thank you.
Tracy Valois.
Thank you for your questions. The irony is, of course, that it's called social security, and it's not giving everybody the security they need at the time when they're at their most need. And in terms of our housing crisis that we have, it seems ridiculous that we would allow a situation where somebody may be made redundant for a period of 6, 9, 12 months to have to sell up their house and have to move to goodness knows where in the demand of a rental sector that we have at the moment, so that just because that we don't provide that assistance at the time. And it's something that I mentioned in my speech about looking at the income support system, looking at social security and those particular funds. And this is something within the remit of income support when it was brought in 2007. We were supposed to be measuring it and identifying whether it was actually meeting its goals. That's never been done. So it needs a full review and a full assessment as to how we can properly assist in those particular circumstances. In terms of education, well, this is huge. I mean, the basic things in terms of paperwork, we need to just drop that completely. I mean, it's ridiculous the amount of paperwork that teachers are having to deal with at the moment rather than teaching the children. Actual autonomy at schools, provide support networks, address the curriculum, and actually provide the necessary funding for the resources and invest in the actual support systems. But also, there's been a recent independent review on bullying and harassment across the states, and it identified some serious concerns around education and the way that teachers are being, well, not looked after and supported in the appropriate way. And I'd like to see the recommendations from that implemented as soon as possible.
Christina Moore. I will ask candidates to use their microphones, yes, and indeed.
Thank you for the questions, and Peter, I'm sorry for the situation that you found yourself in, and it's correct, as colleagues have already said, that for those who have assets, there isn't the same system, but that's partly due to our taxation system being low, broad, simple and fair. So I believe that there is room for us, following the Social Security review, which is being conducted currently, to look at systems that can enable and encourage people to save, put aside, and also so that we can better use the Social Security fund that we have. I'm not saying that we're going to unlock that, but perhaps there is a way that we can find a solution in terms of a loan or using the asset base that we have to the advantage of those who find themselves in need at a difficult time. In relation to the education question, of course, skills are an absolutely essential part of island life, not just for today, but also for tomorrow. And I've talked about that in my speech. In my manifesto, I say that we should have more teaching assistants available in schools, because I can see that teachers need some greater assistance so that they can cope with the very many different needs of their students during their working day. And I thoroughly support that. We already see the Every Child Our Future scheme working very efficiently. But I've also read the NASUWT's pay review and their request, and I understand that we need to look at the whole, at the situation of teachers' pay and also flexible working, so that we can see more teachers returning to work and finding a balance with their parental life. Thank you.
John Lafondre.
In relation to the financial support on redundancy, I was surprised there was absolutely none, but obviously, as we heard, it does depend on financial circumstances. It was a particular problem during the actually early years of the financial crash, but obviously it can occur at any time. I tend to agree. I think we should be looking at it. It has to be on a case-by-case basis, but it seems to me, in the circumstances you just described, that we should be looking at some form of mortgage holiday or something for a period of time to address that particular issue, maybe for 18 months. But to allow basically people to adjust to those circumstances, and it obviously mustn't be open to abuse, because that's the counter argument to that scenario. But potentially there are greater benefits in the medium term if you can allow people to just get through that hurdle and hopefully adjust their family circumstances, or hopefully find another job. The interrelationship between income support and income tax is incredibly important, and is certainly something that I would hope we would see as a product of the income support review that's happening. Education, I've been very concerned for a while about the number of staff that are being reported to have left the service in the last few years, and also experiences from friends who are teachers. Personally, I've had some issues with the approach of education to certain areas, and I think it's very clear that the HR culture of the states is suboptimal, and that's a horrible expression, but it's not doing its job. Reducing the amount of admin certainly makes sense. It's a cliche about allowing teachers to teach and children to breathe, actually, sometimes. That's kind of where it's coming from. I would say overall there's a concern that it's all becoming a bit too grade and performance-driven rather than value-added, but obviously I'm not a teacher. We can't get away from targets entirely because of our complete tie into the UK, but that's my general overview. I hope that helps. Thank you.
Gino Rizzoli. We have got microphones. Yes, they are using microphones. Can I suggest you might like to sit down and use the microphone? It might be easier if you pull it towards you a bit.
Oh.
Yeah.
No, can you not hear that? Can you hear it? Yes? Okay. All right. Look, let me start off with the first issue there about help and support. Well, of course, buying property over here is very expensive. I think what we should have is probably about 8 weeks where you're supported so you can readjust to the situation. So that Social Security can support you for at least 8 weeks so you can readjust. Of course, they can't cover your costs forever, but it's certainly a period. But the cost of housing is one of the big issues that needs to be tackled. When it comes to education, I mean, I've slowly watched over the years education being dismantled by politicians. I mean, it's appalling over the years how education has been handled. In my opinion, all these stats are a waste of time. The headmaster should have absolute control of education, and if he doesn't perform and get the results, then we take him out and we find another one. But generally speaking, it's all down to how we move forward as a society. We're very fragmented. In my studies over 25 years, I can tell you when it comes to bringing people together, the very first thing you need is policies that hit the public need to be fair. If they're not fair, they will divide people, incite crime and every social evil that you could think out there. So the very first thing is to unite people with fair policies, whether that's taxation, whether that's support. We need people who understand fair policy.
Lyndon Farnham.
Thank you. I think there does need to be some assistance available. As other speakers have said, our system is mean tested, so if you have assets or means, then it's difficult to get anything. We already pay out about £80 million a year in income support, but actually the cost to society of making a family sell up and relocate and perhaps having to find housing for them, depending on the circumstances, is probably more costly than actually helping them to bridge a gap, if that makes sense. I declare an interest. My daughter is a teacher. She's in her second year at Le Kennevet School, and she absolutely loves it, but colleagues have pointed out she still is only in her second year, and it will wear her down. And I talk to her about, she talks to me actually, and gives me guidance in my political career on a regular basis. But from her, apart from the huge amount of admin that surrounds it, I think the feedback I get from teachers, apart from we need to make sure the resources are there for education, I think I was asked a very good question the other day online by a teacher who was asking me if I knew the waiting list for the Child and Adolescents Mental Health Service as one of the support structures for schools, and I didn't, and I've looked into it, and I've been surprised and really, really disappointed. And I know it's something we're dealing with from the Independent Care Inquiry. More resources are going there, things are happening now. But we need to get resources into the support systems that help teachers so they can free up their time to teach knowing they're properly supported. Thank you.
Sarah Ferguson.
Thank you. It's a bit difficult to make too many comments on the redundancy problem. I'm very sorry for you, Peter. I assume that obviously you had redundancy pay from the company. We do perhaps need to review the scale of statutory requirements for redundancy payments, but it's a balancing effort, because if you have small businesses, they can't afford large redundancy payments. So, you know, we do need to look, I think, at the whole setup and how it's working. And obviously, if you were reasonably advanced in years, then there is a considerable amount of age discrimination in the island. People sort of think that if you're over 55, you're ready for, you know, gardening and knitting, and that's it. I can assure you that doesn't happen. And teaching, I am told that the department is so obsessed with league tables and performance that perhaps it's overlooking the purpose of education. You know, why are we educating our children? We're not educating them to beat a league table. We're educating them to live a fulfilled, you know, reasonable life, making a reasonable contribution to the community. And I think sometimes we overlook this. Is that it? Oh, right. Sorry, thank you. And I think perhaps we do need, you know, to go back, take a step back and say, why are we educating people? What do we want them to be able to do? You know, I feel that perhaps we're missing something.
Scott.
Peter, I'm very sorry about what must have been a very stressful time for you. And I agree with other candidates that this is an area that should be looked at. In my manifesto, I already say that we should be having a review of the social security system, because I hear about so many anomalies and that are unfair or not particularly supportive. As Tracy says, it's meant to be a social security system. So if elected, I would be supporting such a review. With respect to teaching, I've been very fortunate in terms of having a quality education, and it's one of the key things that's important to me in terms of supporting the island going forward in the future. And it has been a concern to me about how teachers in this island have been overloaded. Again, in my manifesto, if elected, I'm looking to cut the red tape to ensure that there's more, as Lyndon's talked about, the support in terms of dealing with some of the issues that can be distracting for teachers. So I've been aware, and I've only just started scratching the surface at looking at education, but I've been aware that there are these support offices like Senko's and ELSA's, and not all schools kind of have these consistent. I've come across one school that's got them full-time. Others are expecting teachers to do that as well. I would like to see much stronger support there, as well as some family counselling for those people who need it, where it's going interfering. Also, more training to provide supply teachers. I have a bit of a plan in my manifesto there about using local resources more effectively. And where we do need to bring teachers in to fill posts that we can't do locally, to provide housing assistance because of the cost of housing, and listening to teachers about what's getting in the way. Thank you.
Gerard Baudin.
Thank you, Mr. Council. It's the mortgage issue. Obviously, it's very stressful. I thought there was insurance for this sort of thing, but if there isn't, then I'm wondering if maybe the state should provide such an insurance scheme, because it's clearly, as you say, it's not satisfactory that somebody should be losing their home, because, as Deputy B rightly says, the banks are in business. They're not there to be compassionate. They are there to insist on the terms that were agreed. I'm left wondering, actually, if the state's...
Could you speak up, please, Gerard?
I'm left wondering I'll just try shouting. I'm left wondering if the state's loan scheme that used to exist would actually have offered some relief in that area, because I believe the old state's loan scheme should be brought back anyway. And conscious of the fact I'm running out of time, teaching staff, I believe you asked what would I do. And I'm afraid this goes back to the crux of my election campaign, the fact that all of us before you tonight are standing for election to the States Assembly and not to the government. That's the Council of Ministers. They were elected on June the 7th, and only ministers can actually do anything. Yes, I had concerns about this for some time, but all I would say is education is obviously under stress because of the rising population. Cuts are being made on frontline staff instead of managerial positions. But what I would say, if I'm elected, bring that question back to me and I'll get on to the Minister and get it sorted. Thank you.
Bill Maguire.
I'm just a simple guy, but it seems to me to be teeny-weeny little bit hypocritical that we're so keen on making so many people homeowners. We're talking about affordable homes and getting people into the housing market, and then as soon as they stumble, it's, oh, you've got a home, you've got to get rid of it. I'm sorry, where's the logic of that? Now, this is actually not just to do with Social Security, which is bad enough as it is, because they've moved from being a situation where they're out to help people to looking for excuses not to help people so that they can keep their budgets in line, which to me is a total anathema. But there's also the matter here of the whole housing market. How we come to this point where we've just left people to the mercy of private banks and private individuals who are funding this. Surely we should be taking more of an aggressive view of how we should protect people and protect their houses, because houses and house owning is a fundamental issue in a civilized society, because without your own home, how the hell are you going to do anything and grow anything? And don't even get me started on teaching. I mean, they test into oblivion, cats, sats, and God knows what else they do. And after that, they've got to find room to teach the kids, to make them move on. How the hell are they going to do that? And then there's the matter of how they have to teach them about sex education, and now about proper eating and all sorts of other things, and they're giving them breakfast. And where is the teaching?
Frank Luce.
Firstly, Peter, I hope you've found a job and things are now back to normal. I think when it comes to redundancy, there's a lot of redundancy in the island. Lots of it, basically through finance institutions who always generously pay off their staff. Unfortunately, if you weren't one of those, then you're in problems. I think that it comes back to a listening government, which is what I'm trying to put over, and that there should be a resource to go back to the Social Security and discuss in each individual case of redundancy can be discussed with Social Security, and if need be, there should be brought in a law where there be a mortgage break or a break from paying Social Security, a mortgage or whatever. But we are a compassionate society, and it's for us to sort this out for the individuals who get in this situation. When it comes to education, I just can't understand it. I mean, if there are problems in the education system, we have an education department which is part of the states. Why can't discussion be held between parties and the thing sorted? The fundamental right of a civilized society is to educate your child to the best of its ability. And we here are a wealthy island, and we should be listening. The education department should be listening to the concerns of teachers. And if there are concerns and there are problems, then we sort them out. It's as simple as that. And if we're not paying them enough, they're getting paid less than the rate, then we pay them more. There's no need to have any problems. They can all be discussed. Thank you very much indeed.
Gordon Troy.
I have a background in finance, and I'm very sorry to hear about your situation. Banks aren't very kind, but they should be, and if I'm elected, I'd like to see a pool now, having listened to your story, a pool where somebody that has this kind of difficulty can go to Social Security and say, right, I need to borrow on the redundancy house pool to cover me until I'm back in work. On another point on that, the courts do protect you to some point. If it comes to the point where you are going to lose your home and the bank wants to take your house, there is a law called the remise de bain, which will protect you and give you a time to stave off to either sell or put the situation right by selling other assets. So there is that protection for you. But I like this idea of the Social Security helping you, because it costs a lot more for them to rehouse you. Moving on to teaching, and I've heard so many stories now from states employees that are very, very unhappy, and they don't seem to be able to have a right of complaint through HR. And it's just a terrible situation where people, to bring a complaint or grievance, seem to have to run an assault course that is horrific to get a basic complaint through. And I think there's a problem with the unions here too as well, because they should be supporting people in employment for the states that aren't happy. Because it's just not, I hear it all the time. HR is the biggest problem to all of them. And teachers do need more. They do need looking after. And it's, sorry, I've run out of time.
Ian Gorst.
Peter, thank you for your question. You raise a really good point about how income support works, which is not the Social Security contribution system, contrary to what some may think. And as a general rule, it only covers for rental support during times of crisis. Now, during the Great Crisis, post-2008, when I was Social Security Minister, I developed, I think it was probably ad hoc, and you might say I was wrong about that, an ad hoc system whereby we said, no, there are lots of people being made redundant, so we need to find a way of extending that rental support to mortgage support as well. Now, I don't have the numbers with me of how many people during the recession used that. I'm ever so slightly disappointed that you weren't pointed in that direction when you had that problem, and it's an issue that I will take back up with them, because it seems to me if people are still encountering that, then that is something that, rather than being ad hoc, can actually be integrated into the system so the Minister can make decisions to help people like yourselves, because it's really important. What we have done is spent tens of millions of pounds on the Back to Work scheme, helping people back into work as well, which is absolutely fundamentally important. I want to spend some time on education, because we have to have an honest community conversation. I have two young children in, I forget whether it's infants or juniors these days that we call them, but they're quite young. They're in a parish school. And I, every day, see fantastic teachers working their hearts out to educate my children. But we expect to be in communication with those teachers day and night. Parents are sending emails. We need a proper conversation. We need to change the culture. We need to make sure that, yes, children are achieving and reaching targets. I think digital can help us with some of the paperwork going forward. We need to make sure that funding is appropriate. Don't forget we introduced the pupil premium, and we put £10 million extra into the education budget by the end of 2019. Thank you.
Sam Mezek.
On redundancy, it was Reform Jersey's Vice Chairman, Jeff Southern, who first fought for a redundancy law to be introduced in the first place. And I think there are a whole host of safety net measures that Jersey is behind others on. One thing we commit to doing in our manifesto is introducing the equivalent of the transfer of undertakings, protection of employment regulations, which protects people from redundancy in the first place when companies are bought out. That was actually introduced in, in the 1980s by that well-known bastion of workers' rights, Margaret Thatcher. And of course, it's time that Jersey got with the times on this. But specifically on the social security side, I'm afraid there is no easy answer to it, because if we're to help people fund their mortgages, then of course the money has got to come from somewhere. And what we commit to doing in our manifesto is holding a whole-scale review of the income support system to make sure that it is actually capable of helping those people who need it. And if there are injustices in the system, they must be addressed. On education, well, to help our teachers, I think we need to offer them more than just platitudes. We need to offer them action. The simple fact of the matter is that you cannot fund a decent education system on the cheap. And the investment that there's claims to have been in the system over recent years has been fake investment, because it's only been covering the demographics. So we, as a party, opposed the cuts to salaries for newly qualified teachers, which other members supported. You are dreaming if you think it helps teachers to cut their salaries in this circumstance. But I think that more broadly, our education system, being based on arbitrary targets and statistics, is a bankrupt system. Schools have got to be places where young people can thrive, and the teachers must be given the freedom to make that happen. I'm very proud that I'm running for election alongside Rob Ward, who's the current president of the Teachers' Union, Anne Southern, who's a former president of the Teachers' Union, and Karina Alves and Mary Ailing Phillips, who are teachers as well. So I think combined, we understand how important these issues are, and we have the experience to deliver on it.
Stevie Ocean.
Peter, I'm very, very sorry to hear what's happened to you. I think there should be a component set up along the lines of income support, and there is flexibility there to do it. After all, I found out to my horror that there is a fund with £180,000 in it that is used for people who haven't been here 5 minutes. Now that is disgusting. When I came here in 1984, there was no safety net. If you didn't have any money, you had to leave the island, or they would turn around and say to you, the old Spanish system, well, if you don't like it, there's a boat in the morning, get on it. It was as simple as that. So I would be looking into something like that, because there is a way of dealing with this, and to make sure, because I can hear from what you were saying to me as well, that it's affected you as well in many different ways, and I hear that from your voice. On the point of education now, the situation is here. Cutting teachers' salaries is counterproductive and ridiculous, because at the end of the day, you take the incentive out of hard-working teachers that are trying to not only earn a living, but do what they love best. Now, there's got to be a way of sorting this out. Now, the Education Department, unfortunately, are more interested in statistics than actually helping, and maybe that there should be some form of communication between the Education Department and teachers, which is lacking at the moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, we've already got through, we've got through 2 questions. We've got 2 more to come. And I wondered if anyone in the gallery wanted to ask a question, because they tend to get left out up there. I can see a lady just in the front row. And there is a microphone on its way to you. If you could stand up, would you mind standing up? Then the lady can see where you are. That's it. If you could just confirm you're an elector of St Helier as well.
Born and bred. We tend to hear a lot of really bad news about the government and everything that's been done badly and everything that's gone wrong. With the rise of social media, we tend to believe the bad news and ignore the good news, and actually the stuff that's been done quite well. I'm just wondering how you personally, if you're elected, will continue to connect with the voters and let us know actually how things are going, and also how you think the government should better connect, especially with the rise of the millennial, who doesn't read the JP and doesn't listen to the Radio Jersey on a daily basis. That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else up there? I saw another hand behind you. Yes, the lady in the second row to the back.
With recent UK legislation making the largest companies in the UK publicise their gender pay gap, I'd be interested to know what the candidates think on this issue and whether they would be willing to propose a similar requirement for our largest businesses to publicise data about their gender pay.
Thank you very much. I'll just repeat the questions. The first one was, how will the candidates connect with voters in this age of the internet, especially with millennials and people who don't read the conventional media? And the second question was, how will candidates deal with the gender pay gap, and will they make it a requirement for companies to publicise what gender pay gap they have? And we start with Lyndon Farnham.
Thank you. I think it's easier in this day and age to communicate with people, and I personally try and stay as visible as possible. Well, perhaps not always, but outside of the social media and the online situation we have, then we live in a small community, and I'm regularly accosted by members of the public, and I think we are states members amongst the most approachable and contactable and visible politicians in the world. But of course, then we've got the traditional media, if we can call them that, for example, the Jersey Evening Post and the radio stations and ITV, and I think we are particularly well served with media for an island our size, although I have to say I don't always agree with what they say. And if you don't subscribe or you manage not to see any of that, then you're probably much happier than the average islander, I would suggest. But no, seriously, I try to make myself as available as possible, and I will continue to do that. My phone number's in the book, my mobile number's easy. I welcome calls from islanders, and of course anybody here tonight who wants to ask me questions, the numbers are there. Please contact me between now and Wednesday. I'd be pleased to assist. And quite simply, I do not believe there should be gender pay gaps, and I would support a move to try and reduce that. I don't see race, colour, creed, gender, religion. I see good people and bad people, and people should be treated, good people should be treated fairly and accordingly in line with that. Thank you.
Sarah Ferguson.
Right, communication. Yes, I see people around all the time. They ring me up, they email me, they stop me in the supermarket at the cheese counter, they catch me on King Street, you know, and I talk to people. I talk to the postman as well. There's a lot of information from the postman. He's a mine of information. And I obviously get feedback down at Age Concern, where I'm actually working. So no problem with the public. Government communication, though, there seems to be a reluctance to actually tell it as it is. It's always dressed up in elegant language. It's a bit like your doctor's notes. I mean, how many people here know that they are entitled to ask their doctor for the link to read their notes online? None of you. Me neither. I've only just found that out. I can't wait for Thursday. I'll be down there. I want to see them. You'll have to delete all the rude comments he's made about me. The gender pay gap. I think probably we will find the UK companies will be dealing with this and disclosing it because they've got to in the UK. The problem, apparently, according to The Economists, arises because women tend to be the ones having children, women tend to be the ones caring, and if anyone needs looking after, then the women have to take time off work to do it, so that you have time off when you've had a child, and then you, in fact, are behind the scale when you go back to work. And you've lost time, and it's that that's causing the problem.
Moscott.
Communication on a government level. I would very much like to see, I mean, I know a lot of work goes into the current government website, but often whenever I've tried to work through it, I've just thought, wouldn't it be nice if there was just like a kind of highlight section, just saying what's been done and, you know, what we think of as successes or things, how we want to move. I just feel that it could be more user-friendly, and I know that there's this e-government project in which a lot of money's been spent and it's not quite clear how, you know, how it's actually evolving. So if elected, I will want to look more into that, because I do think that would be useful. And personally, if I was elected, I would be pretty sure in terms of communicating what I feel are successes and what are milestones and how we might, things we still need to look at. I'm using social media a lot in my own campaign. The publishing the gender pay gap, in principle, I'm very much in support of this, but you do need to be pretty careful about how you approach this in terms of whether you really are comparing like for like. And an example was in the case of EasyJet, when actually they were employing more women in, say, roles of being hostesses and more men as pilots. In the future, I'd hope there'd be more parity there, but you've just got to be careful that people aren't saying, well, you're just not paying everybody the same. I would very much wish to see the potential mothers used far more by local employers, and in my manifesto you'll see that there is a bit about how we need to use these resources much more effectively to also deal with some of the aggravation caused by immigration. So if elected, I would be supporting more disclosure of the gender pay gap, but with the things I've mentioned in mind.
Gerard Bodan.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes? No? We have a little bit of a problem this end of the table, a little bit scrunched up, and in fact, I'm nearly sitting on Mr. Maguire's lap. The microphones are not in an optimal position as a result. Connection with the voters. Now, when I was deputy for St Clement, I ran my own website, and I had a counter on that, and there were very few hits. I have to say, though, that when people contacted me, either by email or by phone, I always replied to every email and every phone call, which I have to sadly say is not the case all over. I mean, in some of the stage members, you need a private detective to try to get hold of them. I even had on my telephone a number counter, because a lot of people would leave their name and say, would you call me back as soon as possible? Click. No number. And of course, you can't get them on 1471 because there's 7 people phoned after them. So I could go through that, find their number and call them back. I always made a point of doing that. Now, the gender pay gap, I can answer that very quickly. Equal pay for equal work. As far as I'm concerned, there's no excuse for anything else. Thank you.
Bill Maguire.
It's funny you asked this question, because we were talking about it just before the hustings, about the sheer number of emails and other such contacts that we've been receiving. And people have taken a real interest in getting opinions about all sorts of things. So as far as I can see, just being part of the island is enough to make me connected enough. I could be wrong on that. As far as the gender pay gap is concerned, I was astounded last year when the CEO of Reddit.com passed an edict that everyone was going to get paid the same for the same work. And it caused an absolute uproar. And I'm like, I'm sorry, is this Victorian times? That, you know, women aren't supposed to get enough? No, if you do the job, you should get paid, regardless. There is no other argument. And so, yes, certainly, let's name and shame those where there's a gender pay gap.
Frank Luce.
Right, communication, finding out what's going on with your politician and government. In my manifesto, I stated that I will have a weekly political surgery. It's probably going to be at the Radisson Hotel. We'll have a champagne bar. comfortable seats, cigars and cigarettes for everybody that smokes. Joking apart, we'll have a political surgery, and welcome to meet all and everybody once a fortnight. It probably will be at the Radisson Hotel if I get elected, but it'll probably just be water or tea. So that's no problem there. And as Lyndon said, we're a small island. You can't stop bumping into people. And I'm always available, and I'm sure Lyndon is exactly the same. When it comes to gender pay gap, what I'd like to know is, yes, let's have it published, the gender pay gap, but what I really would like to know is what are the reasons for the gender pay gap? It would be nice for the companies to actually state why they are paying a lady less than a man. And maybe then we can see whether the whole thing is sensible. Other than that, really, if you're doing a job, whether you're a man or a woman, you should be paid the same. Thank you very much indeed.
Gordon Troy.
Well, if you need to get hold of me for communication, I'll be at Frank's champagne bar enjoying it with him. But joking apart again, yeah, communication, actually this parish is very good at communication because it has the town crier, which does keep you in touch with everything. And it's really a good little magazine. And I think there maybe should be one for the island as such. Well, maybe that's called the JP, but I'm not sure. But yes, gender pay. There's no excuse for not paying somebody, regardless of their sex, what is paid and the value for the job. But of course, it does depend on people's ability as well. But I have seen on occasions where women have left to have children and stayed at home for a couple of years, then come back into the workplace with showing a lack of experience compared with other competitors for the job. And I have seen the situation clearly happen where someone was paid less than somebody else because they don't have a continuous track record in the position. But to my mind, there's no excuse. Proper pay equally for whichever gender. Thank you.
Ian Gorst.
Thank you. It's a very good question, actually, about communication in the modern world, because historically we have relied on the JEP, and tens of thousands of us have read it. But the way we live now, the little amount of time we have means that it's much more difficult to communicate. And if we're honest, government has been on a journey about how it communicates with the public. I could spend the 2 minutes talking about all the good things that we've done, but I'm not going to, because actually we need to think differently about how we communicate directly. There's someone in the gallery behind you who's involved in government communications, and how they've communicated Brexit to islanders and right across the community, I think is an example that we can roll out and do it more and more right across every department. But the issues that we deal with are complex and take time to engage with. I think we need to publish more information online automatically so that those islanders who are interested in it can actually drill down and have a look and then come back with questions. I think actually there's also a place, and you probably wouldn't expect me to say this, for what we call now citizens media, because they sometimes have more time to ask and have more detailed political conversations with us. And I personally find that helpful. Publicising the gender pay gap. One of the last state sittings I publicised the state's gender pay gap. There is a gender pay gap there, and I hope that that will lead on to us engaging with some of our large organisations for them to automatically publish their gender pay gap, because they're starting to do it elsewhere in the world, so there's no reason that they shouldn't. I would prefer that engagement and encouragement before we even thought about legislation, but there is no excuse for a gender pay gap, and whoever you elect is going to have to deal with that in the government right across the states in the next 4 years as well. Thank you.
Sam Mezek.
In reverse order, on the gender pay gap, the short answer to the question is yes. I said in my opening speech that we are a party that fundamentally believes in equality, and yes, that means I'm not afraid to describe myself as a feminist. Equality does not happen by accident. It happens because people fight for it and people campaign for it, and in office that is absolutely what we will continue to do. The States has already been made to publish some limited statistics using freedom of information, and oh boy, they have been very telling and show that there is work that is to be done in Jersey. But I would also support that being extended to companies as well. And I'm particularly proud of the record that we have in the States of supporting policies like maternity leave and actually putting our vote behind that rather than just talking about it. In terms of continuing to connect with voters, every politician is going to tell you that they want to continue connecting with voters after the election. But in reality, there's only so much you can do as an individual. Reform Jersey has the biggest Facebook political page in the Channel Islands, perhaps only second to Guernsey Deputy John Gollop's Facebook page, which is very, very successful. He's in the front row here. A few months ago, I started doing Facebook Live Q&A sessions on my Facebook page, and I've been really happy with how successful they've been and the amount of people who are getting in touch to ask questions. We've been streaming some of our party meetings, including our manifesto launch online, which I think has been a real success. A lot of our candidates are committing themselves to holding constituency surgeries if they're elected, and that's something that will be much easier for them to do if they're working together as a team. We've committed to holding a public meeting once a year to updating members on the progress we've made on implementing our pledges, and that's something we will follow through on. But after the election, as a party, I think we need to look at rewriting our own rules to include more democratic inclusion from our ordinary members and members of the public to feed up that policy making, so it's not just being top-down dictated, it's ordinary politics of ordinary people.
Stevie Ocean.
Government communication, or lack of it. I refer to the States Assembly when Sarah Ferguson was re-elected in the by-election 2 years ago. She went up to Murray Norton and asked to speak to him, and Murray Norton said, "I can't speak to you," which is like a bit of a kindergarten, and I'm afraid all that's going to change. I mean, the situation with silos and things like that. We want total communication within the States Assembly so things can get done and not procrastination as it stands at the moment. But on the communication from my point of view, I'm open on all social media. I intend to actually have a surgery once a month at St Paul's Centre, with no champagne or caviar or anything else, on a Saturday afternoon. Well, we'll do it on a Saturday morning to Saturday afternoon, so everybody can come down and see me. I think that the lack of communication with the point, it makes people think, well, there's, you know, what's going on here? Why won't they tell us? It's window dressing and things like that. So it is a very, very important point. Now, equal pay without question. I mean, in the film industry for a start, and other industries, has been going on for decades like this, where there are pay gaps. As a member of Equity and being asked to stand on the Executive Council 4 times, I've been involved in this as well. And basically, at the end of the day, if you do the same job, you should get the same pay regardless. Thank you very much.
Steve Pallett.
I think in terms, can you hear me? In terms of communication, I think one of the ways you can be held to account, and I've been held to account, is the speed at which I deal with my emails. I'm proud to think that I deal with them quite quickly. I've just started to engage a lot more with Twitter and Facebook and found that a really interesting and engaging way of meeting the public and speaking to the public, and I'll carry on doing that moving forward. But one of the issues I think we need to deal with is the way the Council of Ministers deals face-to-face with the public. The Chief Minister's already mentioned it previously, but I think we do need to have something like a People's Council that could meet regularly with Council of Ministers and challenge the Council of Ministers on their policies on a regular basis. I think that would give the opportunity for the public, I think, to really get their views across, because they clearly haven't been heard over the last 3.5, 4 years. In terms of gender pay gap, it's totally unacceptable that women are paid less for the same job. It does exist here, inequality. It should always be the best person for the job. And we've really got to encourage more women into senior roles. We've got a candidate on the platform here that's held some very senior roles in the private sector, and I think she's a role model for many others. In terms of state, I'm just going to mention states members. We're all paid the same, but there's an imbalance in the states in terms of male and female members. I think in this election, frankly, there's no excuse. There's some really good women candidates in this election, and I don't want to do myself out of a job, but at the end of the day, I think people need to consider the imbalance in the states. I've always found the contributions from women candidates in the states always have a slightly different edge to them, and I think we should start to deal with that. We've got good candidates. If you can support them, go out and support them. Support me as well, though. Thank you.
Simon Bree.
Thank you. Government is bad at communicating with the electorate. I think we all accept that. And it's really important, though, that government does engage with the electorate, because it seems to be that you elect the representatives to go into the States Assembly, they elect the ministers, the chief minister, and then you don't hear a thing. Nobody's telling you what's going on, really. You have to search for it. And I think government needs to engage with the public regularly, to tell good news stories as well as bad, to be honest, to be open, to be transparent. We know that every states member is accessible because you can ring them up, you can contact them on Facebook. But the body that isn't really that accessible is government. The people who actually make the decisions. We have to change that. We've got to encourage greater interaction via social media. But we also want, surely, feedback from you, the public. How do you want government to communicate with you? What's the best medium for you? Don't blame the local media either, because it's the government who should be feeding good news stories out, and hopefully the local media will then print them. With regards to gender pay gap, we need to eradicate any gender pay gap there is on this island as quickly as possible. It is wrong, full stop. We should be able to force large businesses to publish their statistics on what gender pay gaps they have. And perhaps the states of Jersey should be leading by example on this one and ensuring that there is no gender pay gap.
Tracy Valois.
Thank you for your questions without fear of repeating previous answers. In terms of communication, it needs to be an open door policy. People need to feel like they can actually speak to us and understand what is going on in the States. Our contact details are always readily available. Social media has been a very good tool in terms of contacting a variety of different people. And I think it's also an issue of you have to stand up and be counted at times when things are bad as well as when they're good, and actually be accountable for that. And what I would encourage members of the public is to actually don't leave something until it's too late, until you feel like there's no other way to deal with a situation. You should get in contact with us as soon as possible. And the thing is, people will hear you if you believe in what you're saying. In terms of the gender pay gap legislation, I believe the question was whether we would bring equivalent to what the UK have just recently done, and quite simply, yes, I would.
Christina Moore.
Thank you for the questions. Engagement hasn't been as good as it could have been in the past. It's always very difficult, particularly to get good messages across, I believe, and that's why I have always held a surgery in my parish hall, and as a senator, if elected, I would like to continue to engage with people. I think it's absolutely essential that we are where people are and that we can be found very easily rather than expecting people to come to us. Of course, that's much easier nowadays with Facebook, Twitter, and various different types of engagement. And During this election, I think many members who are standing here on this platform have engaged with people in a variety of ways. It's exceptionally time-consuming. And so I think that there does need to be a sense of understanding that members, in order to get their message across, do need to be supported in doing that as well. But I certainly, for one, will assure you that I will continue to maintain a high level of engagement looking forward. In terms of a gender pay gap, I fully support a greater transparency and greater opportunities for everybody in the workplace. I think, as I've spoken about in my speech, there's a drive for productivity, and so to ensure that we achieve a greater productivity, we need people to be properly engaged at every level in the community and in the workforce. That's why I support family-friendly policies, and that's why in my manifesto I talk about an extension of a board apprentice scheme which will help professional parents to keep a foot in the door when they take time out to have a family, so that they can return because they feel that they've maintained their skill level during that time. I think it's absolutely essential that we do that, but also for other groups in the community as well. There's many people with disabilities and other diverse issues who can also contribute. Thank you.
John Lafondre.
Any new council of ministers must improve its communication skills. There's no question there. And that goes all the way down. That's from the chief minister to the council of ministers. That's providing information to scrutiny and to states members. And then that's communicating well and listening to the public. It's interesting in terms of seeing much more use of things like infographics to try and reduce quite complex messages down to digestible piece of information. Hopefully that will appeal to the millennials. And also things like, I would like to see like an interactive dashboard on our websites and things like that, which give key and up-to-date data, maybe population levels, debt, tax receipts, visitors to the island, that type of thing. But we mustn't forget those who are not actually electronically literate either, and in those terms our parish communities do have a role to play. In terms of gender gap, my simple position is that if someone has been in the same company for the same period of time, the same experience, doing the same job and the same capability, they should be paid the same. And anything we can do to improve that needs to be supported. What I did want to do is take the last 58 seconds I've got, because this is probably, you'll be delighted to know, the last chance I'll have to speak to anybody in terms of Hustings before Wednesday. And I just wanted to say I haven't always had the best answer, depending on the searching questions you've given us at times, but I do ask you to look at my record. I hope it's one of hard work and service. It is about community. I would hope you consider it to be a considered approach, and I hope also an intelligent approach. I don't just accept matters, that's up to you. If I think people are wrong, I will challenge. I do care about people, but I also care about value for money. I hope I offer continuity, stability, and experience. Thank you very much for coming this evening, and I hope you'll consider me for one of your votes. Thank you very much.
Gino Rizzoli.
Let me try and quickly pull this back, because I know I haven't performed very well this evening. Listen, 68 years, I've heard all this before. You're absolutely missing a trick here. We cannot do politics the way we have been doing. Things are moving too quickly, you know, in the marketplaces. Information is moving, decisions, we've got to be at the cutting edge. Now, left and right politics won't cut it. Please, forget the oratory. The only thing that will cut it is the truth. Now, you need financial accountability in your states simply because it will deliver you better people, and the information you have is what they're doing, so we can be at the cutting edge. We can use it. The oratory, left or right, is not going to cut this. Every policy we deliver to the public has to be the right policy, the fair policy. And you won't get it listening to good oratory right or left. The right lean too far to the right because they must serve the corporates. They can't serve ordinary folk. It just can't happen. So to unravel that, that's why you need financial accountability. Now, on the left, they haven't got a clue what's fair. I'm sorry, it's more dangerous than the right. So, no, listen, don't cut in. I'm just saying, allow the truth to deliver your politics,
or you're going to get fried. Thank you.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your questions. A couple of candidates asked me if I would allow them 60 seconds at the end of the meeting to make what John LaFondre has just done, a bid for your vote. If the members of the audience are content, I propose to offer them not 60 seconds, but 30 seconds to tell us why we should vote for them, because it's getting a bit late, and I think 60 seconds will add a full quarter of an hour. No, they don't want to. They don't want to talk to you. They're tired. So, well, some of them want to and some of them don't. So I think on that basis, I don't want to cause any disruption. But what I do want to do is to thank very much Martin and Alison, who've had the unenviable task of being timekeepers this evening from the parish of St Helier. On top of everything else they're doing to run the election in St Helier. I'd like to thank the media, both the traditional and the social media who are here, vote.je for a tremendous job they've done this election. I'd like to thank the sign language interpreters for coming this evening. Tony Morling, the priest in charge of St Helier Methodist Church, thank you. This place is bigger than the town hall and was, I think, a good place to come this evening. I'd like to thank the candidates for being generally good at obeying the bell. And I'd like to thank you very much for coming, especially those who asked questions this evening. Do go out and vote on Wednesday if you haven't already, and encourage your family and friends to do likewise. Thank you very much.